Hello and welcome to Kinsei-Do Corner. Have you ever wondered how to unlock your full potential and live your healthiest, most fulfilling life? Then this podcast is here to help you achieve just that. We dive deep into the world of health and performance, exploring how to move better, feel better, and live a healthier, more fulfilling life. I chat with inspiring coaches, athletes, health experts, and high performers from all walks of life to learn from their stories, mindsets, and lifestyle choices. Whether you're an experienced high performer or new to the world of health and well-being, I'm in your corner to guide you on the path to being the healthiest, happiest, and highest performing version of yourself. Let's go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on Kinsei-Do Corner. Today is exciting as I am starting a new series, something I've never done before on this podcast. So the next couple of episodes will all be featuring the same guest, the esteemed coach Ryan, and we'll be talking about programming and kind of planning and structuring your training according to different goals. So each of the 6 episodes will talk about a specific aspect or a specific goal of the training. Today's focus being programming for strength training, for strength gains. And what that means we'll get into as well. But firstly, thanks for coming on, Ryan. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back, as always.
You are back indeed. Fellow or let's say regular listeners of the show will surely recognize your voice. You've been on a couple of times. And so for the ones that know you, they know that you are obviously an eminent expert on this topic. But for the ones that don't, so Ryan, just to give a brief introduction, Ryan is a coach, a gym owner, and an extremely accomplished and awesome athlete, both in the CrossFit space and previously in the bodybuilding space. So he surely has the wealth of experience, of personal experience that he can share with us. And obviously, as a coach and gym owner, he's also trained clients, including family members. I believe your daughter is a prime example of an athlete that is reaching or even exceeding anything ever believed possible. So truly, you are the expert, and I can't wait to get into this topic today.
Thank you very much.
Right. So you're welcome. Let's kind of set the scene. So in each of these 6 episodes, I want to kind of talk about considerations and parameters for programming for strength in this particular episode. So what should people kind of think about? What are the parameters? What is the structure within which what you are about to say applies? And then we're gonna get practical right away. So
Sure.
Tell us kind of what can people actually do? Is that rep schemes, sets, weight percentages, anything you want to kind of dive deep into? That's what we'll discuss, so that people have something to really take away and be like, okay, this is tomorrow's Monday. This is what I'm going to do, and they know what it entails. So let's dive right in. Floor is yours.
Okay. So there's a few fundamental requirements, I think, of anyone who's looking to undertake or is already undertaking strength training who wants results. So number one being, I mean, I know a lot of this will probably sound cliche, but funnily enough, in fitness, I think you'll find that most ideologies that work are practical and also relatively obvious. So first and foremost, a little disclaimer is, I think firstly, if you do want results or you want to gain strength, the number one aspect that you need is consistency. So commitment and consistency. So, we have to always have a plan, of course, that goes without saying, and I'll get into that in a moment. However, firstly, you need to be willing to be consistent, to stay on track with your program. Okay, so when we're training for strength, we're training for an adaptation. We're trying to create an adaptation in our body whereby your body will become accustomed to the stimulus that we're creating for it. So you're trying to lift a certain amount of weight, and you're lifting that weight often and often exceeding that weight in by a number of parameters that allow your body to adapt to uh, a progressive amount of load or weight that we're trying to put on the body. Okay. Um, so first and foremost, that can't happen with it unless we are consistent. Okay. The next pillar I would say is we definitely need a an end goal. So there needs to be a time frame, and there needs to be an end goal. There doesn't necessarily have to be a time frame. Um, Actually, however, the sec the second major fundamental, I would say, the reason that we need a goal is so that we can have metrics. So we need to be able to track what we're doing. So first things first, we need consistency. Secondly, we need to be able to track what we're doing. So we need metrics as well. Um, and then uh,
Okay, allow me to
that's
kind
that.
of jump in
Honestly,
right there.
that's
So
about
that's
it.
kind of the
You know.
okay. The first thing
But
you
I
mentioned,
mean, as a
consistency, and
basis,
obviously I truly subscribe to, so consistency being the most important thing for any change, right? And training or trying to
absolutely.
gain strength is just another thing you want to change. So consistency
Mm.
is key. Um, in the spirit of getting practical, what does that mean for you here? Does Give us like a number. Do I need to train every day? Do I need to train do I need to hit
Sure,
minimum 3 days a week? Is 1 day a week enough? Consistency can mean many different things for different people.
absolutely. Yeah, I understand. Um, Now, what I will say is because from working with a number of different athletes over the last about 15 years, um, there's a loose guideline of what we can follow for strength gains. But I will say also that a lot of it is down to the person or down to the athlete who's trying to perform that, who's trying to um, administer those adaptations. And what I mean by that is we're always going to be confined to our ability to recover, number one. Um, and that means that's subjective to the athlete. So, but what I will say is, I think, strength training can be done anywhere from once a week. I mean, in terms of trying to, um, trying to stay consistent and stay on track. You can have one strength session a week, um, if it's, hyper focused, all the way up to, 5 or 6 days a week, as long as your program is balanced, um, and it's still allowing for you to recover in between your sessions. But what I will say is, I think um, the the more frequently that you're training for strength, say if you're training, 5, 6 days a week, um, the more balanced your program has to become, but also the smaller that the incremental changes have to be in order for you to make steady progress and be able to recover and to be realistic. So if you're training once a week and you're getting plenty of recovery and you feel great training, your nutrition is great, your rest and recovery is great, then you can probably afford to make uh, larger incremental changes to your program weekly in order to try and create an adaptation. So, we can train with probably more intensity. Um, we can take, slightly larger jumps in weight or volume or repetitions or something like that. I'll get to that in a moment. The metrics that I use for
Mm.
strength gains. However, if you're training daily or you're training that quote unquote modality more often, um, then the incremental changes need to be more um, more subtle, more subtle. So
Hmm.
I have a few different methods that we can use for strength gains, for gaining strength. So number one, obviously, is the one that everybody thinks of first, is increasing in weight. Okay, so we need to create an adaptation, as I said, and for that to occur, we need to progressively overload the body. Okay. I actually, to be honest, I don't actually like the term progressive overload. I think it's not a very accurate description of what
Hmm.
people may think it is. Um, I mean, it is. However, it sounds it it doesn't sound conclusive, in my opinion. And I know that you can
Interesting.
technically you can progressively overload forever. I know that. However, if I was a newbie or a beginner lifter coming in, I would be like, well, okay, you progressively overload, but what what happens and for how long and what does that mean? Really, it's not you know a very good um, sort of I suppose descriptive way to describe what we're doing. Yes, we are overloading, but I think it's more like we're just um, you know I wouldn't call it this, but we're taking baby steps. We're making incremental increases. And that can be done in a
Hmm.
number of ways. So the things we have to focus on here, everyone always focuses on increased weight first. So for example, if you did, you know, um, a 60 kilogram squat for 5 reps last week for 5 sets. Okay, you can come in next week and you can do 61 kilos or 60 and a half. You can increase incrementally in weight and make the body adapt to lifting 61 kilos for 5 sets of 5 reps. And that seems like a logical and
Hmm.
reasonable, appropriate increase in load. Okay, so we could say, all right, well, every week I'm going to try and increase 1 kilogram on my squat, and that in itself is
Hmm.
progressive overload. Okay, and we can become stronger that way. Um, However, I think a lot of newbie intermediate athletes as well will also run into the problem of, well, what happens when I can't add that weight? When I'm really pushing to the limitation of my ability here, my capacity here, my current capacity. So what happens next? And what happens after that, or our alternative ways of creating adaptation, is what I think a lot of people don't program enough for themselves. Um, is so the next one obviously is we can increase in volume. So, for example, if last week uh, I did 61 kilograms on my squat and I was only able to get 4 sets of 5, and then on my final set of 5, I fell short by 2 reps. Well, next week, my goal could be to increase in volume. So, for example, it would be to achieve all 5 sets of 5 repetitions, or we could get 4 sets of 5 and 1 set of 4 at 61 kilograms, and that would still be a sufficient increase in my opinion. So, and I think that most people, the
Hmm.
biggest problem is they take jumps that are way too large. Um, so
Hmm.
even those type of small incremental changes can make a big difference over time. It's like you have two paths, but you only change one path by 1 degree, and then over time, if you keep that trajectory, you'll create a large change, if that makes sense. And
Yep.
that's really what strength training should be. It's a lot. It's Everybody should be in it for the long haul who really is serious about it. And like I said,
Hmm.
stay the path. Um, the next one would be rest intervals, I would say as well, and I like that one. So, for example, you could be doing 5 sets of 5, and if you're timing your rest of say 2 minutes per set, you could
Hmm.
consider decreasing your rest time slightly as well in between your sets. So, for example, say for my 5 sets of 5, I would like to try and rest for, my first set, I'll rest for 90 seconds. First and second set, I might rest for 90 seconds instead of 2 minutes. And then I'll put my rest back to 2 minutes if I need it, or I'll hold that 90-second rest period for as long as I can in between my 5 sets of 5. And if it's not achievable, or I feel like I'm not ready, I'll give myself that extra 30 seconds. and go to my regular rest time. So you can do that also.
Okay, I find that one interesting because I think normally you associate decreasing rest with other adaptations, maybe strength, endurance, possibly, or generally endurance. Right? You're able to you're able to do more work in a shorter time, essentially. But
Yes.
I've never thought of it, and I've never heard of it being used to kind of as a way of increasing strength. And actually, my question is maybe whether you've seen it. Have you seen someone, because ultimately the kind of the metric of increased strength is being able to, let's say in the extreme case, have a higher 1 rep max, right? So have you
Hmm.
seen actual strength gain from this third method? Because ultimately I'm not actually I'm not lifting more, right? So whether I
Yeah.
do my 5 sets of 5 with 60 kilos over 15 minutes or over 10 minutes, I've still lifted
Mm.
the same volume, the same load. So I would be surprised, to be honest, if that resulted in
Mm.
suddenly me being able to hit a 1 rep max of 70 or 75 um, because of that method. Have you seen that happen?
Yeah, it works for myself. So whenever I think, and to be honest, I mean, I'm not an advocate of bro science or anything like that, but I do know that if you see something that works, you take notice, and if it
For
works, it
sure.
works. So, for example, when I try and when I program for an athlete to do a 1 rep max test, generally I have a sort of like a demeanor of striking while the iron's hot. So we want to strike while we want to hit that 1 RM or hit those warm up reps, especially while they're warm and while while their adrenaline is high. So what I'll do during a 1 rep max test is usually I'll take quite large jumps in weight. Say if I'm testing a squat, and I usually
Mhm.
won't really uh, allow the athlete to take any more than probably 2 minutes of rest in between their attempts. Now, in saying that, doing a 5 by 5 with less rest might be a little bit different from doing a 1 RM with less rest. I would be more inclined to do the 1 RM with less rest actually, because the adrenaline is high and because the power
Mhm.
output,
Mhm.
the fatigue is going to be a lot less. So that one
Mhm.
is subjective, but it does work. In my opinion, if you're going, say, for example, you're moving in doubles or singles only, where the fatigue factor isn't that high, then yes, in my opinion, a decrease in rest can result in a higher power output. Believe it or not.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, for example,
That's a
I
new one for
tested
me.
my
And yes.
I tested my squat about 3 weeks ago, and between all of my warm ups, I took 90 seconds of rest. And between my top two attempts, I took about, uh, yeah, I'd say about a minute 15 or something. They were pretty close together. Yeah. I think especially for more advanced athletes as well,
Okay.
if
Okay.
you have experience
Mm.
and you have that high adrenaline, I think that your chances of success is actually higher rather than waiting, uh, 5 or 6 minutes like some
Mm.
athletes do. I think it's too long. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I can see that, right? Because I mean, you have a warm up for a reason, and if you cool down again, then what was the
Exactly.
point? So yeah,
Yeah.
I can get that. I'm just wondering whether as a method, let's say if I were to program my next 6 weeks of my strength cycle, and my
Mm.
goal is to increase my power output, increase the maximum that I can lift. Um, if I were to before listening to this episode, if I would have done it, I would have, as you said as the method number one, I would have tried to go up by a kilo or 2 kilos or whatever every week,
Sure.
and keeping the structure the same, 5 by 5, for example.
Mm.
Whereas now you're saying maybe I should, instead of doing that, I could also just keep the 5 by 5, keep the weight, keep it at 60 kilos or 70 kilos, but just decrease the rest every week by, let's say, 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
Is that equally valid? Is that equally, well, I'm not going to say is that going to lead to the same gains, but is that going to lead to gains?
In my opinion, of course, yeah, absolutely, because you're pushing closer within the confines of maximum fatigue. So, for example, if you have two athletes and both of them want to perform a 3 by 3 bench press, okay, but one of them can only achieve it if they have to wait 6 minutes between their sets, and the other one can do it in 90 seconds between their sets. Who do you think has a higher power output?
Okay.
Obviously, the one who
Yeah.
wants
No.
to do a lot less.
In that
Yeah,
way, it makes sense.
you know,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
The
that's
higher
kind of what I'm
power,
talking about.
output, as in overall, right?
Yes,
That would be the higher power output because time is shorter. But does that also
yes.
mean his 1 rep max would be higher?
I would almost definitely say yes. Of course. If you have to
Okay.
rest less
Okay.
to
Interesting.
achieve the same, if you have
Cool.
to rest less to achieve the same amount of work, then it's almost certain that
Hmm.
his 1 rep max would be higher. If you're
Okay.
talking
Okay.
about
I
now,
will
if you're talking
definitely
about
be.
now, you and I'm happy to be challenged on that by anyone who wants to try. Um, and that's not saying that I'm right. It could be subjective as well, but it is a metric that you
Mm,
can use.
mm,
Um, if you feel so, for example, if you are doing a 3 by 3 and you're trying to test your strength, you're on a program. Last week you did 3 by 3 100 kilo bench press, and you noticed that you had to rest a
mhm,
significant amount of time before you could achieve those 3 sets with technical efficiency. But the next week you notice a significant decrease for the need of that recovery, and you feel strong, and you hit those sets with technical efficiency much faster. That, in my opinion, is a strength increase. Absolutely.
mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that kind of that viewpoint, and it's and ultimately 1 rep max, all these like what do you bench, all of these things are just
Mm,
they're just numbers, right? As long if you're
mm,
stronger in your daily life, then that's
mm,
at least for me and for most people, that's what it should be about. So yes, so
mm,
power output and doing the work and doing the same work in shorter time, um,
mm,
or being just less fatigued by doing the work, right? That's because
mm.
in real life you rarely go to the max, right? It's rarely that you need to, I don't know, push a
Correct.
car or something. It's just about, can you carry these suitcases? Can you put them down? Can you carry them
Yeah,
again? That's kind of why we need strength, not to do 1 RM benches. Okay,
absolutely.
let's kind of zoom back out
Sure.
and uh, and kind of, so you said three ways of thinking of the programming. One being gradually increasing the load, the kind of the
Load.
logical approach. The
Mhm.
other is increasing the volume. So
Yes,
five
sir.
by five sets, going to maybe 6 sets, going to maybe 6 reps per set, whatever that
Mhm,
is, but keeping the load the same,
mhm,
just increasing the volume. The third that we just discussed in depth, kind of decreasing the rest period. Um, what what do you what should someone taking listening to this? What should someone taking this away now? What should they do? What if
Yeah, sure.
I want to spend the next 6 to 8 weeks increasing my strength?
Mhm.
Where do I start? What do you do with me?
What I would do is uh, to be honest, so start when you're starting a program or you're starting to build strength, start small, and start with manageable load and manageable volume. Um, and you could start, for example, I'm a huge fan of 5 by 5. I like 5 by 5.
Hmm.
I think that it's a good middle ground between enough volume and also enough load in order to really kind of harbor strength gains. Um, and
Hmm.
it's a good metric. It's a lot more. We can play around with a five reps of 5 sets of 5 reps more than we can play around with a 3 by 3 or a 2 by 2, etc. So what I would do if
Hmm.
you're an absolute beginner is just keep it simple. stick to something like 5 repetitions. Okay. Um, Over the course of your program, what I would do is I would gradually try and increase the volume first. Okay. So I would
Mm-hmm.
be selecting a weight that I can do. Okay, I can do this for 3 sets of 5 quite comfortably. And next week, I'm going to try for 4 sets of 5, you know, or I'm going to do my 3 sets of 5 and I'm going to do an extra set and I'm going to see how far I get. And that's going to be my total for this week. And then the following week,
Mm-hmm.
I would keep building and keep building and keep building until you can use that weight, the same weight, for 5 sets of 5. That's a good start because that's not providing too much volume for the athlete, in my opinion, especially someone who's new.
Mm.
Once you work your way up to that 5 sets of 5, then what I would be doing then is probably increasing the load. So starting to, okay, I have this amount of weight for my 5 sets of 5. Okay, now I'm going to stay there for the remainder of my program, for the remainder of my time frame, if you still have time left on your program, and then we can incrementally increase load every week. And that incremental increase can be, as small as you like. So um, I usually say for athletes, usually half a kilo or 1 kilo per week
Mm-hmm.
is what you would be aiming
Mm-hmm.
for on your 5 sets of 5 because it's quite a lot of, it's quite a lot of repetitions across all 25 repetitions. If you can increase one kilogram on that, then that's already a
Yeah.
pretty big deal. And that might not even be
It's
possible.
already it's a
Perhaps
25 kilo volume increase, right?
it's huge. Yeah. So you might only get that for
Mm.
your first 2 sets, and then you have to back it down to your original weight that you were using for the remaining 3 sets, and that will be your result for the week. And that's the easiest way that I think that I could explain quote unquote progressive overload or incrementally
Mm.
gaining strength to someone who's new. So that's what I would do, and that can be applied across pretty
Okay.
much any major compound lift.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Yeah, I love that, and obviously myself, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a beginner, although maybe I'm not an intermediate yet. Uh, but anyway, definitely I'm coming back from a longer period of holiday and of also an injury, so I can put myself in the beginner shoes and start there again, and I will. Starting tomorrow,
Mm,
I'll follow your advice and I'll try and build up over 6 to 8 weeks. Again,
sure.
two questions there. Um, would you? And I think this is quite popular in the CrossFit space. When you have a 5x5, you typically you build up in weight. You're trying to increase your load every set to. I think often it's programmed as build up to a heavy or something like that. Is what coaches
Mm,
say. Would you do it that way, or would you actually say no, the 5 sets should be the same weight,
yeah.
and basically do any other sets, or do a different session to kind of figure out what that weight is, but then when
Mm,
you get into the work, your 5 sets should actually be 5 heavy sets rather than
yeah.
starting at 40, 45, 50, and then finally by set 5 then I'm at my 60 kilos,
Sure.
but I'm
Sure.
actually only doing one working set.
Mm, mm. So that's a good question. So yeah, when I'm programming for my athletes here, we do a lot of that actually. We do a lot of build to a heavy set of 5 or build to a heavy double. But I save
Hmm.
that type of thing for when I need to decrease volume but increase intensity or keep the intensity high. For example, if our
Hmm.
if other aspects of our programming are building, like say for our conditioning is building, or we've got a heavy focus or emphasis on things like gymnastics or something like that, or we're in the middle of a running program that's progressing, then and I need to pull back on that strength volume, then I'll do it like that. But for someone who you're talking about is just trying to gain strength, I would highly suggest and recommend that you don't do that. You keep your
Mm-hmm.
weight across the same across all sets, if as much as possible, unless you're trying to create an incremental change, create a 1 kilogram increase, then you can
Mm-hmm.
move up to that 1 kilogram increase and then move it back down the 1 kilogram as needed, and that will be your result for the
Mm-hmm.
week. But the thing is and I think probably a lot of strength guys might even disagree with me on what I'm saying for this whole segment. But what I will say is the reason that I'm saying just do 5 by 5 and keep it like that is because most people don't realize how simple strength gain has to be, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people overcomplicate it. But also a lot of people just aren't realistic. It's so easy for people's ego to get in the way when they're gaining strength. People don't realize how hard it is to actually do
Mm-hmm.
maintain one weight across all 5 sets of 5. Most people just don't do it. They shoot way too high in the first set and then they just crumble.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And if we can understand where we're really at from the beginning and have a realistic representation of what our strength is, it's going to be a lot easier to have a basis for consistent and progressive strength gain rather than just be all over the place, which is what I feel like a lot of people are, especially when they don't have the guidance of a coach or a program. They go in and say, I'm going to do 5 by 5, but their 5 by 5 is, they'll have you know, a really intense effort on the first set, and then they'll
Mm-hmm.
get 4 or 3 reps on the second set, and then they'll even try again with the same weight and get 2 reps on the third set, and then they'll either get discouraged or they'll have to drop their weight massively just to be able to finish the fourth
Mm.
and fifth. By that time, they're so fatigued that it's not an accurate representation of what their strength really is anyway. So, and I find
Mm.
that for a lot of younger people who are in the gym trying to find their way with strength gains. But the best thing is to do is shoot lower than you think. Um, and if that's way too low for you, then you can experiment by doing a few more sets at the same weight, or you can incrementally increase and have that next set as your first working set, or you can just have one set as a lower weight and then increase for the next 3 or 4 sets, and at least it will give you a more accurate
Mm.
basis for a foundation of starting point.
Yeah, yep, yep. Okay, that's a great one because that is exactly kind of my experience, right? You kind of you start with a weight, again, call it 60 kilos, and it's like, okay, this is moving quite easy. I should go up the next set. So you do, and then okay, this is still moving all right. So then you go up again, and by set 4 and 5, really struggling just to keep up with that weight. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so from that point of view, maybe especially coming back from a longer layoff, I'm going to pick a weight that I know I in the past could lift comfortably, which by now may be okay-ish, not
Yeah.
comfortable, but okay.
Be
And I'm going to
conservative. Yeah.
make sure I hit that. Yeah, I'm going to make sure I hit that for 5 by 5. Um, and if I feel it's very easy, then maybe the next time I'll do your decrease the rest period thing rather than go jump up on the weight straight away because again the ego gets into the way very quickly. Hello, friends. I hope you enjoyed the episode so far. Unfortunately, during recording, we had a technical mishap, and it turns out that the second half of Ryan's audio and video was not recorded past this point. However, all the knowledge that he shared has so far is so good that I didn't want to keep it from you. So I've cut the episode here and published this as it is anyway. In the next episode, we'll focus on training for endurance and programming for endurance. So I hope you'll check in again when that episode comes out, and hopefully we'll get the full knowledge and the full wisdom of Ryan that time around. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned to Kinsei-Do Corner.